Hi, we are Sebastian Gobernatis and Claudia Ixtel, and we talk about massive construction. What is massive construction? Massive construction is a form of supporting structure in which elements not only serve to close off the room, but also take on the static load-bearing function of a house in the form of walls and ceilings. It is therefore the opposite of filigree construction or lightweight construction, where the load-bearing elements are different from the space enclosing elements. In the course of time, different construction methods and building materials were developed which should meet the changing demands on living comfort. Initially, this was the stability, protection from moisture, and the effects of the weather, and later fire, noise, heat protection were added. The definition of massive construction does not inherit a materiality of the construction, but because of materials conditions, masonry, stone, and concrete are the most used materials for this construction. Thanks to concrete construction, it is also possible in solid construction to either produce whole components on site or to prefabricate them in the factory. Stone is one of the first materials chronologically when it comes to the method of massive construction. We distinguish between masonry stone and natural stone, where masonry stone is a ready-made form for the building construction. The main components of masonry stones are lime, sand, clay, loam, and water. Concrete is a composite material composed of fine and coarse aggregate bonded together with a fluid cement that hardens over time. Many other non-cementitious types of concrete exist, with other methods of binding aggregate together, including asphalt concrete with a bitumen binder, which is frequently used for road surfaces, and polymer concrete that uses polymers as a binder. Although wood is not a popular material considering massive construction, it can be used as shown in the following example. Aside from the reinforced concrete foundations and the walls in contact with the ground, it is a purely wooden structure. Thanks to the high degree of prefabrication, construction lasted just 16 weeks. The exterior walls employ glue-laminated timber. The cantilever is made possibly by story-high crosswall elements. One of the earliest forms of massive construction are fortresses. Cuba's interest in fortresses began around 1600 in response to defense and security amongst pirates and political attacks. The fort was built of limestone quarried from the Havana shoreline, and the fortification incorporated thick sloping walls, a moat, and a drawbridge. Fidel Castro said in 1961, "Cuba will count as having the most beautiful academy of arts in the world." The Escuelas Nacionales de Arte was constructed between 1961 and 1965. It has been designed by the Cuban architect Ricardo Porro and his Italian partners Vittorio Guarati and Roberto Gotardi. The three major concepts of the design were, first, to integrate the school into the wild character of the landscape, to only use locally produced bricks and terracotta tiles, which were cheaper than imported materials like steel and cement because of the US embargo on Cuba. And thirdly, to use the vault as a geometrical symbol that stands in bold contradiction against the international style of the Western capitalistic architecture. The enthusiastic support of the National Art School in the early 1960s was sinking by the end of the decade, and compositions of the complex were left unfinished. More than 50 years later, much of the concrete is flaking and the brick and mortar has been eroded. Therefore, some of the buildings remain in use today, where others lie abandoned. Because of its architectural importance, it was decided that the National Art School should be conservated and supplemented professional. The Politecnico di Milano will act as the lead organizer of this project.
When I talk about massive construction, it is impossible for me not to think about standardization, normalization, and typification. But above all, I think about large architectural programs that, due to social or economic conditions, require a speed of execution and the maximum use of local resources, so that the projection is economic. It is impossible to talk about massive construction without referring to prefabricated systems. This is because these compositive alternatives have been very useful through time. Prefabricated systems became popular in both post-war periods in Europe because of the economic crisis and the necessity not only of housing funds but also of public buildings. Prefabrication is the practice of assembling components of a structure in a factory or other manufacturing site and transporting complete assemblies or sub-assemblies to the construction site where the structure is supposed to be located. General advantages about prefabricated systems. The industrialization of processes results in a reduction in labor costs, the greater planning of the works, and the lesser probability of unforeseen events results in a shorter execution period, generating an economic optimization of the work. The prefabricated industrialized manufacturing achieves high-quality finishes both in geometry and in surface quality. The structural functioning of all vertical walls as deep beams together with the plate effect of the slabs as well as the joining system between panels gives the resulting structure greater strength against vertical loads as well as excellent performance against horizontal stresses like earthquakes. The activities carried out in the industrial installation can be planned and controlled better than those carried out on site, resulting in an improvement in the working conditions for the operator. General disadvantages about prefabricated systems. The elements suffer states of transitory load in their transport, positioning, lifting, and adjustment, which can affect the structural resistance of the piece. The collection, handling, and form of transportation can affect the pieces if these operations are not carried out by trained personnel. Using prefabricated systems requires a very important initial investment to start up the production systems, but is justified in large works with reduced execution times. You must have heavy equipment for the assembly of structural elements and have enough space to maneuver with this machinery. These prefabricated systems have been commonly used through years in our country. Sandino prefabricated systems, Hiron prefabricated systems, SAE prefabricated system, and SMAC prefabricated system.